Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Well, I got a viewer letter today that I'm going to try to answer asking about the best brand of rotary cutter. And I'm normally brand neutral, but I'm going to give you my opinion. And if you want to argue with me, that's fine. Put it in the comments down below. Let's get to the letter. Letter comes from Randy. And Randy says, Mike, I'm buying a new tractor. I pretty much zeroed in on the brand and model I want. I'm trying to decide which rotary cutter to get. My local dealer sells, and there's a brand that you probably heard of, and he also sells a cheaper brand called another brand that you probably not heard of. And I'm not going to name them because it really doesn't matter. I'm trying to decide whether to spring for the known brand or save a few bucks and go for the lesser known one. What do you think? Randy. Well, Randy, to me, rotary cutters can all be grouped into kind of three categories. And I'll tell you which my pick would be of the three. The first category is the known brands, the famous brands, the big players. And in my mind, those brands are Bush Hog, which in my area and over much of the country is the most known brand. Rhino, which has been a brand that's been around for a long time in various configurations, various names. It's actually owned by the same people that own Bush Hog. Woods, which is a brand I've had some experience with. Land Pride, which is owned by Kubota and a brand I haven't had experience with. And John Deere. And if you go to your John Deere dealer's lot, you'll find out they sell John Deere cutters, but they also sell the Frontier brand. And Frontier is not on this list. Maybe they should be. You can argue with me. But those are the players. John Deere, Bush Hog, Rhino, Land Pride, and Woods. And those are the most known names. And if I can afford it, I personally am going with one of those brands. And the reason being, number one, parts and service support should always be there for all those brands. I know if I need parts, if I screw up a gearbox or if I screw up a tail wheel, I can get a part from a dealer that's local. I don't have to travel a long way to find a dealer. And I know that my resale value is going to be good on any of them because at least in my area, all those brands are well-known name brands. So for those reasons, if I can afford it, those are the brands I'm going to go with. Now, while we're here, let's talk about, I get asked all the time, I'm looking at a Bush Hog or a Woods or a Land Pride or a Rhino or a John Deere, whichever one, which is the best cutter? Well, you have to understand one thing that most of these cutters share in common is that they make different grades of cutters. And if you're comparing one to the other, you've got to make sure that the cutter that you're looking at from one brand is the same as the cutter you're looking at from the other brand in terms of what diameter of material can they cut. Every rotary cutter brand that I know of is rated by how big a diameter they can cut. The lightest cutters will cut up to 1 inch. A little bit heavier cutter will cut up to 2 inches. Heavier yet cutter will cut up to 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, etc. And these name brand of cutters that I just mentioned, most of them have different grades of cutter. So if you're looking at a Woods, it'll cut 1 inch diameter against a Bush Hog, it's going to cut 2 inches in diameter. You're comparing apples to oranges. So make sure you're comparing the same size capacity cut with one brand versus another to determine which one you want. And honestly, of those brands, I would be happy with machines that they all make. I think all of them provide good products, great support, parts availability, and great resale value. So if I were looking, I'd probably look around and zero in on 2 or 3 machines and find the one with the best value. But that's what I would go with personally. Now let's look at group 2. And these are cutters that, and I'm going to lump a bunch of them together, but these are not as well known as the name brands, but still a known quantity. And ones that I think your resale value on would be okay. And this is based on the fact I worked in a dealership for 11 years. And if somebody was trading in any one of these brands, I would view them favorably, but not as favorably as the big ones. And here's my list. And you can argue with me on this. And if you want to, put it in the comments down below, but I'm going to read them. Bevco is one. And speaking of Bevco, I think Bevco bills for Frontier. I don't think the John Deere Frontier line is actually, like, you won't find a Frontier factory. I think all of the Frontier product is bought from some other company that builds it, painted green and given a different name, Frontier. And so I don't think John Deere has too much to do with that other than to tell the factory to build it and get a bid for it. But I think Bevco is a company that sells directly to dealers and customers, but they also build for John Deere. And there may be others that do. Farm King is one. Bushwhacker. House. I'm going to give you Ironcraft, which is a fairly new name. They were Titan Implement before they were Ironcraft, and there was Titan Implement and Titan Attachment and a lot of confusion, so they changed their name to Ironcraft. There's King Cutter. There's Kodiak. There's Modern. Taylor Pittsburgh. Taylor Way. And then there's two others that are actually in many ways better than the top level that I gave you earlier because they're designed to cut heavier stuff, and that is Schulte. And in my area, you see a bunch of the kind of weird green colored Schulte cutters behind tractors mowing the right-of-way, and that's kind of their target market. And Brown. And Brown is a company, I think they called it a Brown tree cutter that I used to sell when I was in the dealership world. And if you wanted to go out and cut 6-inch material, the Brown tree cutter was what you wanted. They had a extremely heavy built cutter that would cut huge material. And if you wanted to bulldoze your tractor and rotary cutter, you got a Brown brand. They were expensive, but they were really heavy built. So some of these brands are better than others. I'm just saying that their name, at least in my area, is recognized. And if you were buying one, you would probably get a decent cutter that had resale value at the end. And hopefully you could get parts for them. Now, if you go to your dealer and he's got 30 of something on his lot and it's not one of the big name brands, he's probably expecting he's going to be servicing that product for years to come, and he knows that he can get parts for it and that he knows that he's going to be able to provide service for it. So I would be less afraid of buying one of those, but my first choice would be the main brands. So we've got the name brands, the lesser name brands, and then the no-name brands. And in the no-name brands, there's a bunch of cutters that are probably not built by the chain, but they're sold at your local co-op or they're sold by your local farm supply store or on the back lot. It's somebody that doesn't buy tractors. They don't provide much service, if any. And if you buy them, they're cheaper than the other two categories, and you just load them in the back of your truck or on your trailer and take them home, and then they're yours. And if something goes wrong with them, you're probably not going to be able to take them back to that location and get them serviced. So I put them at the bottom, and I personally would stay away from them unless you're on a really severe budget and you just cut a little bit of grass a year and you don't cut heavy stuff. If you're not going back in the woods and cutting bigger material and you're just clipping off grass and you do it once a year, maybe one of these farm supply store brands that you've never heard of and I've never heard of and no one has ever heard of would be fine. But if you're going to be cutting a lot, cutting the bigger material, and you're planning on using that rotary cutter, you kind of look at it as an investment that's going to last you a long time, maybe the rest of your life, then get category 2 or category 1, the main name brands. So if you disagree with me, put it in the comments down below. I'm kind of curious what kind of comments I get on this video, but that's the difference in them. The bush hogs, the land prides, the woods, the rhinos, and the John Deeres are more expensive, but they've got more support behind them, and there's no free lunch. You're going to have to pay for that, and all things being equal, they're going to have a better resale value than the lesser known products, and resale value may not be that important to you, but you know, think about if you bought a cutter and you bought a 6-foot cutter and later down the road you found a deal on a bigger tractor and you wanted to move up to an 8-foot and you wanted to trade that cutter in. If you buy one of those more name brands, it's going to bring more. So you pay more up front, but it's worth more at the end. I appreciate you watching my videos. I would be honored if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking the mic face icon, and make sure you check the bell so you get notified when I post future videos. Here's a link to my website and the Tractor Fun Store with cool things for sale for the tractor owner that helps support my channel. And here's another couple of videos you might want to watch. Thanks for watching.